Hi Rahul, good evening.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah.
Good. So, yes, Sayed, how have you been?
Very good, very good. So we have Sarita, of course, you can see Sarita and I are the only ones who have our video on, and then of course there are a few of my colleagues as well. This Blume admin is obviously a colleague, no doubts for guessing that.
Lockdown has obviously played its part in helping you put on a few more kilos, I think.
Me? Oh. yeah. So yeah. So there are about quite a few of us. I think I can see about 17 people already on the call.
Wow. Okay.
And a few more will join soon. But it's great to kind of it's great to kind of see you, Rahul.
Yeah, thanks for turning the video on. It actually helps connect. Right?
Yeah, please, of course, yes.
Yeah. So not everybody is going to turn their video on. So, yeah.
People are doing
as well. You don't see their yawns and all that, you know.
Yeah. So I think it's. I think I'm seeing you. I think I don't think I've met you since 2015-16, Rahul. Since
I was around with you till March 2016.
16.
I'm not sure I know we've spoken a couple of times, but
we've spoken a couple of times. Yeah. I think we tried to meet up in the middle as well once. But
yeah, we tried to.
Anything interesting that you're reading, Rahul, now? I know you always read.
Oh, actually, well, lots of stuff, actually. I've done a bit of binge reading on Malcolm Gladwell, not binge reading, a couple of his books. Then, some miscellaneous things, actually. Some feel-good books of the, let's say, books when you type into Goodreads, books that remind you of To Kill a Mockingbird, let's say.
Okay.
So sort of.
Are you at this
classics,
period? Do you feel like revisiting some of your comfort reads, like the book which you've really liked, and do you ever feel like that?
I think so. In fact, just this morning, my daughter in Australia and us, we were reading some of our favorite family books. Like there was a book by Vikram Seth of Beastly Tales. That's a book of lovely poems.
Yeah.
We actually spent about half an hour reading out from there.
Oh wow! So there's a tendency you're eating all the staples. You probably don't necessarily want to read all the staples, but I think there's
spare time allows you to sort of unwind.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. So
Sanjay on as well.
Sanjay is here as well. Sanjay. So Rahul, I must tell you, since you're reading Gladwell, there's a wonderful essay. I think say it for edification of all of the people on the line. There's a wonderful essay by Gladwell. It's a longish read in the New Yorker on the 1918 pandemic. Okay. And what's actually fascinating, I think the single most fascinating paragraph from that is how it just has disappeared from our consciousness. It killed like 2-3% of the world. The pandemic killed 2-3% of the world, like with the population it had then.
Yeah.
But by 1921, it doesn't even get written about. It doesn't feature in any, even like the great novels of that time. It's never entered literature, etc. So it's fascinating how things pass and the various theories around that. But
of course, the social media and the 7 news environment.
Living through something together, you always tend to remember. Where were you when Kennedy died? Where were you when the towers collapsed? So so maybe quarantine is that one which will create that shared memory for us. Yeah. So Sarita, see, we're in your hands. We'll wait for 2-3 minutes more. I
think a minute we should. Once we hit about 40, we should start.
Sajid, can I ask a question?
Yes, Sanjay. Okay.
Actually, related to books, Rahul. First of all, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining.
Rahul meets Sanjay, partner at Blume, and a great friend of everyone in the startup community. Yeah.
Hi, Sanjay.
Yeah. Hi. You know, there's a new book called The Range, right? Which actually Malcolm Gladwell is talked about. Have you heard of that book? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, not really. No, I have not read that.
All right. Okay. The book talks. It's interesting. Karthik is also on the call, and it actually talks about learning across and sharing learnings across patterns and not just deep. And she talks about how this, we think it's a specialized world, but actually how generalists triumph in a specialized world. So very different. I know Karthik's also on, and Karthik's also in the book.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
Hi Rahul, long time no see. I'm going to let Sajid start off. Very good.
Yeah.
And we won't waste more time. Let's Sajid get going. A lot of people keen to hear from you.
Yeah. Great.
Thanks. Sajid, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce
So
Rahul.
request you all to put yourself on mute unless you're talking.
Yes. It's great. So, so the way we have structured this and is it's going to be an hour and 15 minutes, and so about a 2-3 minute intro from me to Rahul, of Rahul rather, followed by a 25 to 30 minute presentation that Rahul's going to put together, really kind of share his framework for viewing the Indian consumer. So the framework is called Roots versus Wings, and Rahul will talk about what it means. Rahul also updated it to kind of, let's say, kind of fit the COVID situation, the COVID context, so to say. And so he's updated it for that. So we're going to use that. So we use that as an anchor for a discussion which we'll follow. And so the discussion that follows could be questions that you have. I mean, Rahul, and I'll tell you why Rahul will be great at answering that. Also a small discussion around the Indian consumer. Okay, so that's really the context. The net takeaway from this, what should it mean is, I'm not promising there'll be a certain actionable in the way that you can go back and say, you're not going to get anything saying, oh, I'm going to go and do this. But it's really, I hope you'll come away with a very richer sense of the Indian consumer, of the way he or she thinks. And sort of, if you were to kind of reimagine your business and some of your facing challenges in the post-COVID world, what should the building blocks of that thinking be about the Indian consumer? That, I think, will be the big takeaway. And of course, you can stay in touch with Rahul after this. He advises Ustra. And so let me now go on to an introduction of Rahul. So I know Rahul since the late 2000s, around the same time I met Karthik is when I met Rahul as well. He was by then the head of the TOI brand, sort of the person who kind of headed all the business aspects of the brand. There's of course Jojo in edit, and Rahul kind of headed all things. Rahul joined us from Leo Burnett. He was kind of number 2 to Arvind, like he had a long stint there. Before that, Rahul, of course, graduated from IIM Calcutta. So at times, Rahul has said a long stint, sort of anchored a lot of the thinking. He also worked very closely with one of the shareholders, the main man, Samir Jain, also with Vinny Jain, of course, but really sort of used basically all of the intellectual horsepower, including the brand thinking, some great campaigns there, kind of Teach India, all of that came from Rahul's mind. And so I see Rahul as one of half dozen big picture marketing thinkers in India. It's sort of like in the arena with Santosh Desai, Sudhir Sitapati emerging at the younger end now. So a bunch of these, the big picture marketing thinkers. And I think I'd certainly put Rahul in that half dozen there. So, and I kind of reached out to Rahul off late. He's working with the Future Group, and what he's really doing is he spends a few days with them, helping them think through on the marketing thing, maybe, and really also advises one startup, Ustra. So Rahul was very happy to kind of come here and kind of share his thoughts on the Indian consumer, and he's sort of going to present it through a framework he's invented. So Rahul, it's 4:36. I'm going to leave it over to you for the next 25-30 minutes.
Thank you for the kind introduction.
Yeah.
I'm glad for the disclaimer that we shouldn't expect any blinding insights here.
No, I didn't say that. I said blinding insights. But
no. I'm just saying that I just wanted to make that point clear. At this point in time, because on the one hand, there's no dearth of opinions going around on what this crisis holds for mankind as a whole, etc. I'm sure all of you have come across many such points of view. So to try and synthesize all of that, of the sort of the whole pot boiler of changes that's happening into a single presentation is obviously not going to be an easy task. But what I will do is to try and just share with you some theorems on or approaches on how we may choose to look at it. And thereafter we can open it up for questions. I've tried to also include some thoughts on, by looking at the kind of profile of investees that Blume has, try to see if there can make some connections back with your client base. So the structure really is going to be consumer behavior in India, key trends. This is really a sort of an existing presentation I had, where it's a sort of structured way of looking at the multifarious changes that are taking place in India and indeed in the world. Having sort of set that template or some broad context in mind, just a deep dive into what the pandemic could mean for the Indian consumer, and some opportunities that might throw up, some dangers and opportunities. So I think the framework for looking or understanding the changing Indian consumer, I sort of labeled it as wings and roots. Because it's very interesting that I would say, I mean, I think that period of the last 10, 15 years have been one of cataclysmic change. Even my own lifetime, you know, I can see that as compared to the first 25 odd years of my professional life, you know, it was, you know, we can love to talk about change, but it was really, you know, change wasn't the word to describe that period. As compared to what I would say is the last 15 odd years, where it's sort of changed at a breathtaking place. And the interesting part of this change is that it's taking at both, it's actually the amplitude of change is increasing. In other words, it's stretching in both directions. On the one hand is what I call wings, which are the new hedonistic Indian, the Indian who wants to, you know, sort of adventurously explore the world and live out new dreams, is a global citizen and all the rest of it. And on the other hand, a countervailing force of some kind, which propels him to seek out his roots, his tribal identities. He goes back to some basic tenets that I think this generation had sort of left behind, and so on. So let's explore this. So the wings of change, if you will. I'd say, of course, the one big
Rahul, is there a presentation that you want to share, or will you prefer to talk through it?
I'm sorry, Bapre, I thought I was actually in my own mind seeing this presentation. I had not said share the screen.
Yeah.
There's no sort of command. One second, hang on. Good point.
Yes, if you can just put it in presentation mode. Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect. Here, there you go.
So I just said, you know, this is the broad structure.
Yeah.
Clearly, the internet has been the powerful change, the pivot of the change, especially in the context of the wings that have sort of grown in the Indian consumers' minds and behavior. It's been a powerful new window to the world. What it has done more than anything else, I would say, is that it's unleashed the individual. You know, I think we always saw ourselves, India, as a collective society where we mattered more than me. But I think in stages, the internet has been a great catalyst in unleashing the individual. You see the selfie as an all-powerful metaphor of this idea, with sort of people pouting, you know, to take, you know, for their DP updates, sort of craft their profiles with sort of, you know, with a great amount of care and thought. And the whole idea is to present yourself to the world as a distinctive individual with your own sort of creative flair, with your own ideas. So individuals sort of handcrafting the personality they wish to present to the world. And this has resulted in an explosion in many categories like men's grooming, color cosmetics, fashion, stuff that, you know, plays to the hedonism, the hidden hedonism of the individual. And in pursuit of hedonism, the other broad idea is to see yourself in, you know, the primal male was this adventurer, the sort of the lone warrior, or the person who sort of, you know, wasn't a domesticated, what do you call it? He was a man or person of adventure. And I think to some extent that basic primal desire has got unleashed. Life is an adventure, an accumulation of experiences. A traveler, foodie are some of the most preferred tags one sees on people's profiles. And this has sort of resulted in a major reordering of what we consider dear, what we consider assets in the first place. So from physical assets with long-term value to memories and experiences as assets. And I think what that's given a rise to what I sort of coining a term, the experience economy. People don't want to be limited by their current means, their current ability to buy. They would like to borrow, rent, you know, live off the future to be able to live those experiences now. So huge willingness to spend on experiences that create permanent memories. Food as entertainment, holiday as an adventure. Weddings, I remember at a time, you know, when I got married about 45, whatever, not 40, 35 years ago. You know, the whole idea was to spend whatever limited budgets middle class families had on a sort of a trousseau or or a gift for the young couple, or if you can afford it, maybe a 2-bedroom house or whatever, or a car or whatever. Today, I think it's, the priorities have changed completely. Obscene amounts are spent on destination weddings, the kind of monies photographers and videographers charge, the decor. It's far ahead, and it doesn't really matter if you don't give any hard stuff. But that album that will result from all of this is probably the biggest asset at the end of a wedding, or indeed a bucket list for everyone who's 60 plus or whatever, or indeed younger. Interestingly, again, I think the service, it's really become, I mean, we talk about us having become a service economy, but it's really quite a complete overturning of a paradigm. Earlier, service was difficult to sell on its own and needed bundling with a physical product. We may all recall, even although many of you, I presume, are much younger than me, that in small towns of India, doctors would charge for the medicines and often give it the advice for free, because at least you took home something concrete. Or brand consulting, industry I'm still in, needed a physical output like graphic identity to be able to charge any decent amount of money. But now it's a completely opposite sort of paradigm. Consumers now increasingly buying a service or solution. Till Raw Pressery was selling only bottles of juice. It was making only certain fairly anemic kind of turnover. But the moment it started selling regimens, you have a detox regimen, and you're selling a package of which the product is a part. And more you'll find examples of people buying a solution, of which, yes, the product may have a very important role to play. But what you're buying is an end result. You're buying a service. Similarly, from the need to own a personal car to rent a car or hire a cab, luxury products on hire in virtually every category, from jewelry to premium clothing to luxury products, hire of clothing, furniture, luxury cars. In other words, the ability to experience a wide range of products without the need to own anything. Because people just don't want to be limited by their current circumstance. They would like to be able to have a taste of the good life or whatever else their dream may be. And all of this, I think, in financial terms is ranged again by a complete change in paradigm. I would say till barely 15 or 20 years ago, I would say, by and large, the paradigm with which Indians operated was the idea of saving for a rainy day. So you started cautiously. Even the only permissible big ticket thing was maybe if you could afford to invest in a house by the time you were 35 or 40. That was, a highly desirable goal. But certainly the idea of going on a holiday on EMI or buying a music system or a car on EMI was sort of unthinkable. The whole idea was that, and the whole assumption was that the future was a dark and uncertain place. You couldn't be sure of what googlies it will spin on you, and it's better to be ready for a rainy day. As compared to which, there's a complete shift of paradigm, and by and large, young India assumes that the future will be brighter than the today. And they're quite willing to borrow off the future and acquire those experiences now in the belief that they will more than earn enough to pay it back later. So all of this, I think, has given rise to, and there's just a few, and there are millions of examples you can take on this broad space. But there's, this is the dominant narrative that a lot of us think about when we talk about India, that it's this new India of dreams and opportunities and wings. But I think there's also an equally almost strong countervailing force, which is sort of drawing us back to the roots. I think at one level, it's a response to the increasingly stressful and sort of what we perceive shallow life, urban life today. The whole idea of survival of the fittest, the perpetual rat race, one-upmanship, a decline of ethics, not just in the political class, but in civil society, rising intolerance, cynicism, fault lines in society, and all of this is just making you a little more restless as a society. A new realization seems to be dawning finally. I think it was always said that for India, with at the lower end of the Maslow's hierarchy that it was, it had no time to bother about things like the environment and so on. So the sort of what's happening in the polar ice cap didn't really concern anybody, etc., etc. But environmental degradation is not out there anymore. It's there in the daily air, in the air we breathe, and the chemically overdosed fruits and vegetables we buy. And the frustration at life becoming a perpetual motion, machine. commuting times going up to 3-4 hours a day, and so on and so forth. So all of this, I think, is in some sense also creating a yearning for the simpler, purer times we have left behind. So on the one hand, you want to fly and try new things and be this hustler who can make a day trip to China and back and all the rest of it. And on the other hand, you say, what the hell am I doing? And there is a part of you that wants to reconnect with a simpler, with your roots. And I think in some ways, there's another big factor that is resulting in this sort of disquiet. There's been a huge polarization of society, I would say, progressively in the last 5, and it's gathering momentum. And I think in this, the industry that Sajid and I and Karthik spent some years in, media, I think that had a huge role to play, and especially social media. You see, if you go back a few generations in time, or indeed at the start of the first public media, mass media, which is, let's say, the printed newspaper. A newspaper, almost by definition, is like an open letter to society. It's read by all kinds of people. More often than not, a town or a city could have only a single newspaper. So it had no option but to present diverse views, take a balanced central point of view on things, and so on. So it was open and inclusive, the discourse, akin to a town hall discussion, where all views could be aired. And you could hear dissenting points of view as well. And from that, there's fundamentally been a change. Television was a bridge in the middle. And now social media, you are now in a bubble. You're in an echo chamber that you only hear voices that you want to hear. You choose, and you don't consciously choose. The search engines, the social media engines, figure out what you seem to want to hear or respond to. They keep serving you more and more and more of that, till you find yourself in a bubble. The continual serving of material that one likes. In this is a vilification of the other, and therefore the fake news. Truth be damned, people are progressively believing what inputs that they already believe in, and rejecting outright inputs that they don't. And therefore, I think I can see it amongst my friends, I can see it in my family. You may start off with a minor bias towards the left or the right, or towards one point of view or the other, and there's a progressive reinforcement of one's biases. Because you keep hearing negative slander about the other point of view, and you keep hearing rationalization of your point of view, which steadily nudges you away from the center to the extremes. You can see this across the world. America first, Brexit, now the kind of vilification of China, which I suspect it will find some difficulty in integrating back as smoothly with the world as it had, and so on. So there's going to be fault lines across nations already, with people drawing barriers at their national boundaries, and you get more and more selective on which kind of citizens you want to allow into your country, which one you won't. Anyway, we'll come to what I think COVID holds for us a little later. There were already big trends or big evidence of insular nationalism taking root. And not just nationalism, wherever there was a fault line in society. Within nation, communal or caste divides. The US relations, from all accounts, is much worse between the blacks and whites, despite 8 years of a black president's having come to power. I recall hearing with great hope when Barack Obama was sort of being sworn in, but this is a seminal moment for America, where blacks will finally sort of reach center stage and the mainstream, and the class divides would blur. Far from it. We talk about the war of civilizations and the Islamic world versus the rest of the world. Look at the fault lines within Islam. Sunnis versus Shias, Salafis versus Wahhabis, Ahmadiyas, Buddhists versus Rohingyas in a neighboring country of ours. Within our country, Bhakts versus pseudo-liberals, prostitutes, all kinds of horrible, names to label the other person, the other group. Now, all of this, I think, has resulted in, in several things. And it's not just, relevant for society, and whatever is relevant for society finally becomes relevant for marketers. I think it's sort of, a big reason for the success of brands with a Swadeshi worldview like Patanjali. It's only, I think, partly the fact that, it's sort of selling you things seemingly with Ayurvedic base or some such. It's far more about national, MNC bashing, about the idea of India finally coming into its own and all those kind of notions as well. And a return to so-called traditional wisdom, cow's ghee, or older gains like jawar, bajra, gur, yoga, etc., etc. To, in general, and all this environmental degradation, to a seeking of health and safety and traditional wisdom again in a variety of products that we buy. So foods, whole wheat versus maida, millets, healthy oils, organics, cold pressed, no preservatives, wild, not farmed if possible. In beauty, there's no dearth of, which right now I think are just sort of, probably just blah on the packaging, it's sort of there. But I think progressively people are getting concerned, and you find, I mean, they're still faddist about it. So virgin coconut oil will come along, will be all the rage for a year, and then sort of quietly disappear, etc. So these things also happen. But, I'm just saying, there already was at least progressive search. And I one could see from a future, what was selling in our stores. Progressively, the share of some of these things was steadily increasing. A renewed focus on basics like education, relearning, etc., etc. So this is just a sort of a broad framework against which we can look at the next bit. The pandemic, of course, has been, I don't think I'll spend much time on the macro aspects of what it is. We all know it more than closely enough. But it's being likened as probably more cataclysmic an event than anything that any of us have survived in our lifetimes, at least. And therefore, I've sort of tried to broadly look at two broad time frames. The first is not defined in time as much as when the pandemic is so-called is active, till we believe we have crossed the hump, till we believe either through the discovery of a vaccine or because of a complete slowdown in the rate of infections or whatever. So the time that till the pandemic is active versus what it might unleash even in the future. I think it's fair to say that, first of all, just going by the paradigm of what I've discussed so far, is that they're going to clearly, one immediate thing we can see is, and we'll discuss this in much more detail now, a clipping of the wings. I think this daredevil approach of swashbuckling, optimism induced approach of going out there, conquering the world, grabbing new experiences and blah, 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 that's clearly going to get a massive clipping. And conversely, the trends we were seeing on the strengthening or deepening of roots, I think will increase quite substantively. Let's talk about the first idea. And to do this, what I did is, interestingly, I just posted a question in my IM group on each of you guys, just tell me one idea or one thought or what do you think is going to happen. So I've used that liberally in terms of quotes and whatever, just sort of, to produce verbatim what some guys wrote, as well as another batchmate of mine, Ambi Parmeshwaran. He had started a conversation on this subject in his, I think on some blog or LinkedIn page or some such. So some of the interesting comments that I picked up there as well. I mean, the truth is that in the short run, till the pandemic is active, I mean, anxiety is probably an understatement. There's going to be sort of economic devastation for many, and anxiety is for almost everybody. Even if you've not been directly hit, a general sense of not being sure, because even if your business has not been hit, your investments have been badly hit. Your asset prices may have come down dramatically. In general, you don't know. Also the daily issues like will I run out of rice or something or whatever else. So in that sense, a sense of economic anxiety on the bread and butter issues. Paranoia about health and hygiene is an obvious one. And of course, aided or spurred by the physical restrictions on travel and assembly. So first and foremost, a fairly obvious point, is there'll be a high degree of caution in spending. And interestingly, I'll just read the quotes out. We'll ask, do I really need this? And I think in that sense, this lockdown, which has already been for 3 weeks and may extend, has in some ways acquainted us for the first time, at least the consuming classes, the upper middle class and so on, of having to make do without many of the things you considered as necessities of life, or had begun to consider necessities of life. So products that we have learned to do without may never come back. I happened to be speaking to somebody in the Times of India. newspapers already is facing a torrid time in terms of, a decline or whatever. Now that you see, especially in cities like Bombay, where the newspaper distribution has come down a lot, their fear is, and I'm sure I would tend to agree with that fear, that even when supplies resume like normal, many people having discovered that it's okay to keep, to switch to the e-paper or to the, the online newspaper instead. They may never sort of come back, and that may happen for product after product. Spending will be focused on necessity rather than comfort and luxury. Businesses as well as households will conserve cash. So, cash flow itself will become a big issue, and sort of you don't receive your revenues on time, you will ask landlords to not, to forego your rents and so on and so forth. Durables is in particular expected to be badly hit. Routine replacements will be postponed, or rather replacement just because your model was a bit out of date or whatever will certainly be postponed. Non-essential durables will probably not be bought. The second broad area, a high degree of insularity and cocooning. I think it will happen probably psychologically, not just in terms of physical enforcement. One sees around, I think instinctively in the Mother Dairy booth near my home, nobody's telling them, nobody's policing this, but I see no less than 3-4 feet between people on its own. And this is Delhi, mind you. Where people just didn't know the meaning of queues and so on and so forth. Just sort of cautiously standing by and so on and so forth. So people will, and I think more importantly, I think in general, nothing is permanent. I think things will bounce back. Societal, instincts will rise again at some point in time. But I think for a while, people will generally become more inward looking and less social. I think you get used to the idea of saying hi from a distance. Less social, but doesn't mean necessarily virtual socializing may increase, but certainly physical socializing may just come down because of this whole health and so on and so forth. Social distancing will be in the subconscious always. You instinctively resist from touching somebody or shaking hands and all that. Now, as somebody said, Namaste will be back in fashion. No more hugging, peck in the cheek, etc. Arm's length cordiality will prevail. I think the outcome or are obvious. Travel and eating out, etc. will be the worst hit, as somebody said. Sports and entertainment will be in deep freeze for a while. Or indeed, they may find, and all of this is, just doomsday predictions. Human inventiveness will rise. I think there's no, I find myself, I've gone to, I like watching tennis, for example. I've gone and watched a few live matches, and I find it hardly as satisfying as watching it on television. You can see the replays and what have you, etc., etc. So I'm just saying that it's quite possible that sports, provided the players don't mind not having social distancing for a while, if they're all declared free from the disease and so on. I think it may move online in a big way. Maybe restaurants are already going out of business, will have a very bad time probably. You expect a lot of restaurants going belly up. Conversely, new wings will emerge. I think do-it-yourself is poised for something big. I think in upper middle class India, which was spoiled silly with maids and what have you, the idea of finally using your hands and learning to fix things on your own, etc. That's a tremendous barrier you've crossed in your mind. And I think DIY of all kinds. So on the one hand, of course, so right now we're still talking about wings. So therefore I'm just saying, while physical entertainment may go down, entertainment we've already seen online and through OTT platforms, etc. is already booming and it's going to continue to grow. Gaming, I think, is again going to be more and more time. I think it's not just a lockdown period. Even going forward, I believe, whether because of unemployment or whether because of working from home or from, distancing enforced on you, etc., etc., people will have more time on their hands. And you can't just mope about the disease for all time to come. Now you're already sick of more and more dire news about the disease. So, you want to lift your mind out of that. You're sort of the amount of humor now on the disease, on the pandemic is increased, to a crazy level. Gaming, at least two of my WhatsApp groups, we're posting puzzles and so on all the time. We've restarted a bridge, what do you call it, foursome and what have you. Virtual hangouts, participative events online, sports, music shows for online viewing. Yeah, huge opportunity for some of these, because it's not as if that need has gone away. In fact, if anything, it is rearing itself with more ferocity, because you want to occupy yourself with some distractions. So I think online and virtual entertainment, the conditions are completely ripe for it. It's also a low-cost entertainment indulgence. It doesn't cost you money. You already are paying for your Netflix connection or your, whatever satellite connection. So huge opportunity here. Or a need for affordable pleasures like online food delivery. You can't go to restaurants. You might start. I don't expect after the lockdown at least. Online food delivery is likely to sort of come right back in, because if you can't have it outside, at least you're tired of your own cooking. You may as well at least order something decent from outside. Chocolates and candies, which don't cost much. Low-cost cosmetics, alcohol. In the longer run, I think there is, of course, I think there is it's a clear possibility that as soon as we feel that we are out of the woods, there could well be a correction on this factor, a reaction to the enforced austerity. One comment, people will be sick of all the confinement and pessimism. Once the virus scare is over, entertainment and travel will boom like never before. Because there'll be a pent-up reaction, pent-up. Of course, luxury cruises may need to go out of their way to assure a certain, what shall I say, that everybody is tested before they come aboard or whatever else. So there will have to be suitable checks and balances. But more than likely that you might want to sort of come on in a big way. Luxury will see a huge revival, and later on this friend, he clarified that it also serves a certain, at least in our age group, many of my colleagues are in the mid 60s now, etc. A certain a higher salience of mortality is, I think, how you put it. So in that sense, the idea that you don't have forever to live, this whole bucket list thing will probably become a little more active, at least for the people slightly older. And in general, not much will change in terms of permanent, whatever. People have amazingly short memories. Was broadly the view of, one set of people. Then I put a bridge comment in between. He said, I expect actually a bimodal trend. The materialists will become more materialistic because of the need to maximize hedonic gratification before it is too late to enjoy things. And those advocating sustainability will become even more convinced of the need to save the planet before it's too late. And you can see sort of a divergence possible to take place. And on the latter point of view, and now we're of course talking about a slightly more educated group and a slightly older group as well, capable, I suppose, of prone to a little more introspection. But a lot of comments of this kind. But the lockdown has been a time of stillness for reflection, a questioning of the rat race, for focusing on the truly important things in life. I don't think this is a very intellectual comment. And from the person who made it, is a hardcore realist in that sense. It's, I think, a reflection of this thought one sees around one, in much of what's even being forwarded on WhatsApp, and what chatter one hears around, etc. I hope we learn that we can get by just fine by buying less, using less, commuting less, and being less busy all the time. Taking a pause, slow down, simplistic way of life, and learning to stand out of the right race are some of the comments one heard. And I somehow do feel that for a while, this headlong hurtling towards a hedonistic lifestyle, headlong desire to grab the world with both hands, will certainly see a big arrest in the next few months, maybe in the next financial year, but may come back to a slightly more moderated pace even in the foreseeable 2-3 years. Thereafter, of course, I mean, this is the long term, we'd all be dead, so no point even trying to hazard a guess beyond, say, a couple of years. But I would say that, yes, I think that there is going to be a certain dampening. Well, I think the wings need, gusts of wind and of buoyancy. And I think society will be less buoyant generally for a while. Conversely, I do see a far deeper deepening of roots. It was already a strong reinforcement of the key trends that I discussed earlier. A heightened concern for health and hygiene, heightened concern for the environment, sharpening of tribal identities and values. I see all of these will probably get a fillip, will get deeper, will get more thing. So I think health and hygiene is an obvious one. Pharma sector can expect boom times. Medical tourism could see an upsurge. Face masks are here to stay. As indeed in the SARS countries, in Far East and so on. The usage, ongoing usage of masks has become a factor since 2003, 2004. I think it's now very much a part of their way of life. And it may well become a way of life for the rest of the world now. Sanitizers and disinfectant wipes may well be included in all handbags. The insurance industry will have a boom. Life, health, personal level, also business, insuring against swan events like this. I expect a deeper, this is a worrying one, I think, a deepening fault line of society. You already see the kind of, I would say, vituperative lashing out at the Muslim community, for example. Fine, a group did something irresponsible, but it's got expanded into something much nastier. It was already being felt, this division, through the earlier, the CA, what do we call that, CAA and all that sort of stuff. The NRC, CA, it's already very much being whipped up. And I think it's got a new momentum now. Also across socioeconomic classes. Today, this is seen because it's today been taught by and large amongst the group that travels overseas or has overseas travelers coming in. Today, it's the lower classes that are far more spooked. I mean, domestic servants are far more wary about coming into work for you rather than the other way around. Across regions, so you'll be wary of where the guy is from. Is he from a COVID place? Across nations, and you'll see this, Germany complaining against America's hijacking of some of their, ventilator equipment. China becoming a sort of a public world enemy number one, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's going to get much, much deeper. And I fear it's a fertile ground for revival of ethnic tensions post-COVID. We already had unleashed some terrible journeys through a variety of actions. I just hope that this is not going to, right now, economics may take over that. But I think the ground, a fertile ground has been is getting laid for a little bit of that. A further erosion of trust. I think the idea of this fake news of not being able to trust whatever you hear is just gathering momentum. And I believe for marketers and brands, it really will become paramount to appear fair, to be transparent, to come through as people who are genuinely aligned with society, with nature, and so on and so forth. As I said, the let down time for stillness, for revisiting the basics, and perhaps a need for a stronger core. So from superficial pleasures, the idea of investing in the core may well, as a subconscious paradigm, but instead of wasting your time on superficial pleasures, let's go back to building something substantive. So the idea of healthy beauty, which already was a trend of sorts, I suspect become much more important as a trend. Instead of plastering your face, ladies, with some kind of makeup, get your skin to look good from within, eat healthier, sleep better, and so on. A long-term approach to investments, et cetera, because this is something that's singed just about everybody. The idea of self-reliance, of DIY, the importance of education and learning. And I see that many of your clients are in many of these spaces. And I think, they are poised to benefit from some of these trends. Also, overall, I expect a greater sensitivity towards cultural roots due to mortality salience. I mean, one person talking, but I think it's broadly in line with whatever we've been saying. When we are confined to home, so a certain degree of, again, as I said, back to basics thinking. When we are confined to the home, we see how much joy we can have with our friends and families for working 24/7 to acquire things that really have no value. The next big point, which of course many of your clients, I guess, as a VC, you are funding new age startups who either are online businesses or have online as a very important part of their business model. The lockdown, in many ways, I do believe, is a is a turning point in India's tryst to the digital future. Just like I think electronic payment, the demonetization, whether it did or did not do anything for the black money in this country, it certainly did something for moving, for introducing people and sustaining people on a cashless way of payments. And I think this event is certainly, because you see, without any contact with the real world, life still carrying on. And for you, the digital screen is as real as anything that you ever had. The fact that your phone is running out of battery is panic time. You go and quickly charge it. That has become your real world. And for crores of people, therefore, a sense of the tactile reality of the virtual world. To call it virtual anymore is probably a misnomer. It's here to stay as one of the most real things you can count on. It's of course in tune with the current need for distancing, as most digital services cater to the individual. They're consumed solo, not in proximity with others.
Rahul, just from a time check point of view, we're about 30 more minutes. It can go extend by 5 more minutes, I'm sure. But broadly, a lot more slides or some questions already coming back? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 4 or 5 slides maybe.
Yeah.
So some new virtual behaviors like to become permanent. Working from home. And some of these will in turn impact several related industries. If working from home becomes more and more commonplace, then the need to have a car or a driver becomes that much less. Your consumption of fuel becomes that much less. The need to have a ready set of office or formal office clothes all the time is that much less. So every one of these will have its own impact. Virtual business meetings, and therefore the need to travel, either commute within the city or travel across cities or across countries. We're discovering forums like Zoom to be just so complete. Online education and learning is going to become, was already gaining huge momentum. Is going to see a big fillip. And of course, these will in turn impact several related industries. So great boost for several online businesses, e-commerce, online food delivery, online investments, education, counseling, digital entertainment, telecom. Some exceptions, perhaps even in digital, are those, I think as Sajat in his article in the Times of India rightly said, those that require proximate consumption or online platforms that support that. Like, for example, Book My Show or travel-related portals or online shopping of luxury indulgence products. So online services that mitigate or militate against the larger trends we've seen may have a degree of difficulty. They may need to show some innovation to get out of that, or just hold on till they see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I said, I say in conclusion, we're seeing a cautious insular consumer. Luxury goods and discretionary products are out, travel are going to take a hit. All forms of proximate consumption will take a hit. Indulgent and proximate categories in particular will need to either modify to cater to need for distancing and safety. Like I said, even when you watch something together, you do so with a certain number of seats apart or whatever. Or those kind of companies have no option but to hang in there for the correction that will follow after the pandemic. Back to basics attitude will very much be on the rise. It's a conducive environment for many such industries. We've talked about them. And there's a very great opportunity for building in health and eco-friendly codes into various other products. Value of projecting oneself as an ethical brand and company with a social conscience. Favorable conditions for many online services that cater to individual consumption and are more basic in nature, which many of your products are. So what I've done is I've just taken, and this is perhaps foolhardy of me, because I don't even understand what these guys do other than one line on a mail that I received. But on the face of it, I saw a lot of green dots, lots of opportunity. I think it was getting covered by the thing, so I just.
Yeah, no, it's fine. You can see it, Rahul. Yeah.
So in fintech, if there's only stock portfolios, I wasn't sure, so I put it in as amber. But discovery and selection of insurance products is going to be a big one. Financial products for unbanked population could be Depends on the business model there, of course, in terms of whether the unbanked population is also going to face very dire times. So how do you ensure, the safety and the collateral of those loans, etc. But on the face of it, agreeing. Financial management for millennials, very much so. Test prep services probably could be having its biggest opportunity at this moment, especially with physical coaching centers probably not seeing their whatever, and anxiety about jobs and employment and so on and so forth. Counseling and application service for going abroad is obviously may face challenges. More startup helping kids in 6 to 8 strengthen. I think so, yes. Education is going to take a hit. There'll be probably fewer months of classes and so on and so forth with periodic closures. So that marketplace for gig workers with rising unemployment, as well as companies not wanting to add on permanent manpower. Both marketplace for gig workers and for students looking for part-time work is probably going to have poised for a good time. E-commerce, fashion and discovery, I saw a mixed bag. E-commerce of beauty products, what I expect is, if you're talking about basics, it's fine. But I suspect that most e-commerce sites talk about more advanced, more adventurous, more specialized, discovery-oriented products. In which case, I suspect this is not going to be a time for consumers to try new ideas and so on and so forth. They'll stick to the beauty regimes that were part of their daily habits. That's my feeling. That's the conclusion we've come to on a couple of accounts I've been working on with a couple of clients. Retail and sale of affordable designer or event wear likely to face challenges. Discovery and e-commerce of fashion or household goods from local small and medium business enterprises. I don't know. This is again not a time for exploration and trying out new things. You stick to what you already know, kind of stuff. I mean, I put it as an amber. I don't know enough about what they do. Concierge for wedding planning services, I put a double red, actually, probably. Used gadgets marketplace could be a big one, actually, with people needing to buy something because something is conked off, and rather than spend something anew. For example, my daughter in Australia was telling me the second-hand cars market there is booming, and I was a bit surprised by that. The original cars market is tanked. They are desperate 20-30% discounts. But because public transport, this is a bogey against public transport, the people who used to earlier take buses and so on are now wanting to buy second-hand cars. So similarly, used gadgets could be an opportunity. Extended warranty services of tech products, probably. Real-time ratings of events in the US. I thought that was probably the epicenter of the raid. Apps based on methodology. I mean, the rest seems fine. They're all, consumption or services for individuals consuming on their own. Gaming could see a double green. Health and fitness, I think greens all the way. I wasn't sure about discovery of access to GPs because of the fact that I think conversely, none of you guys in telemedicine, that would have been a huge one. But this startup could morph its whatever to bringing GP advice online. Then it could again become a very interesting, morphing of its service into something else as well. But fair enough. Rental of electric two-wheelers for short distance use. I don't know. Don't know enough. Suddenly I'm thinking it's akin to, if you are, no, actually it might be a green. If you're spooked by the idea of using a metro, it could be a big green actually. Ticketing and food ordering for rail and bus travel, again, probably going to have difficulties. Used car marketplace could be both a green or an orange. I don't know how India will go. I think there'll be a tendency for a slowdown, but, etc. So this is just, I mean, you will know this so much better, but I just wanted to just check whether, and I was at least happy to note that much of your client investee profile is in the online space and is, on the whole, in areas where individual consumer can consume those services. They're not linked to proximate consumption. So I think for those likely to experience a favorable environment, I think it's a time for sensible investment, consumer acquisition and brand building. I think history is replete with examples of brands that survive and thrive in crisis periods. They have an exponentially high, a success rate subsequently. So, as probably as the people who've invested in some of these companies, to ensure that they don't, even if they have temporary shortfalls in revenues, if they are part of this larger, more conducive environment, this is the time to deepen their businesses. And for those likely to face headwinds, it's probably a time to conserve cash, not try anything daring, just hang in there, survive somehow, and wait for the good times to return as they inevitably will. And that is it.
Yeah. Thank you, Rahul. Interesting. So, so a couple of questions have come, and so I think the first question by so it's kind of from Konark from Mount Blue. Essentially helps train developers, web developers, and software developers for companies. So sort of what's called HR tech, as they call it. So Konark's kind of asking, everywhere we're hearing that COVID marks an inflection and that will never be the same again. So he's asked a very different format, not industry point of view. What will change in us as consumers from an India 1, India 2, India 3 perspective? This is of course a very favored way to kind of organize the Indian consumer class. So India 1, I wrote about it also. Yeah. So India 1, so Konark, you can add to this, I'll just complete the question. So India 1 would be like people like us, Rahul. Which So what's your view? And Konark, feel free to kind of just pop up and
what will happen? What is the question again? I missed the
No, so I think the presentation itself answered what happens to India 1. That's primarily what the presentation was anyway. I asked this question before Rahul started presenting. But I mean, any views, Rahul, on what happens to India 2 and India 3? So people in the villages, for example, or the poor in the urban poor, do they change as consumers, or are they, I mean, or are they too much as a fringe?
There will be a ravaging of their I suspect we haven't heard the worst of the news that will come out. I think, a poor country like ours, having completely no productivity or opportunity for earning for 3 weeks at a time, and they're probably continuing into many more weeks in many parts of the country. And with businesses closing down, I suspect there'll be havoc, actually, to be honest. I suspect, people certainly in the manufacturing industries and India 2, which you find is probably attached to India 1 in various ways. As drivers and domestic staff and as, salesmen and women in the big bazaars of the world. I think there'll be face challenges like crazy. So I think, I don't know. I see any number of you would have been reading about them, but there some dire predictions on the possibility of an economic recession and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so
So
not very
affected quite poorly, I think.
Not very optimistic, Rahul. I can sense that. Yeah. So does it answer your question, Konark? Yeah. So I'll go to the next question. Darshika, who's head of marketing at Yulu, which is the bikes for short-term distance. She asked, in some ways, I think you've answered that question. You're not too optimistic about it, but you said there could be like a silver lining in terms of people scared of this.
Actually, I don't know. It depends on how it pans out. The truth of the matter is that India's public transport is about as far away from social distancing as anything in the world can be. I mean, you sort of, you're like, hugging each other all the time. And if there's a paranoia, which indeed there is, but the truth is that this is the idea of illness for the poor is also a desperately frightening one. They don't have access to medical facilities and all the rest of it. They assume that the big hospitals will only cater to the influential and the moneyed. So they, and I'm not talking about the dire poor may not have the ability to hire a two-wheeler, but the middle class and the lower middle class could well say, look, let me, if I can't buy a two-wheeler outright, let me hire one for the sake of being able to be free.
No, Rahul, these are, this is a company called Yulu. We make these electric bikes. They're short, like, those cycles, electric cycles, and even normal cycles. So I'll flip the question other way around. If you were like I know it's like a 2-minute this thing. Suppose Yulu had to communicate that they are COVID proof in some ways. Like, okay, it's a publicly utilized thing, etc. And are there any ways in which they can kind of do proxies for hygiene or anything like that to kind of communicate?
The very idea is got COVID proof, right?
Yeah.
And it's breathing air potentially thick with viri, in the confines of a train compartment. You are out in the open, so this is inherently a COVID proof idea, right? So I think so. What is their pricing such that it's a yuppie thing for this? Is this new age cycling kind of a thing, or is it functional cycles?
Functional cycles, but short, like Delhi Metro. You can get down, like theoretically, like for example, again Metro. These are like, for example, from Indiranagar to Domlur, like short distances, 1.5 kilometers, etc. Basically, use an app. Darshika, you want to?
I'm aware of this.
Yeah. So you're, yeah. So I don't know if Darshika is here, if she's here, but otherwise I'm kind of asking on her behalf.
Is it necessarily linked to public transport, or is there a way to make it a parallel option to public transport?
So 40% of our trips originate or end at public transport, but then it is applicable for all short distance commute.
The latter should certainly, I think the bigger story may be in avoiding public transport rather than reaching your public transport more, in a better way. I guess the 40% that use it to reach a station and get out from there, for convenience. I think that's not the story, at least, because that will grow or not grow in line with, I suspect, if you have public transport, traffic will come down.
Yes.
But a way of short-circuiting that altogether may be the story.
Maybe the story. Great
Thank
point.
you.
Yeah, Rahul, there's an interesting question from Justin Alva of Small Case. Small Case is a very interesting, this thing is actually a true innovator. Small Case is a portfolio or a basket of stocks around a theme. So theoretically, they could create like a COVID theme to say, like, if you're in the US, it'll be Netflix, Zoom, Postmates, all of the brands which make sense, Unilever, hand sanitizer, etc. So theoretically, you could theme it around that. So Justin, I don't know if you want to come online, but Justin has asked, so I don't know, Justin, what was your specific question, Justin? So you were saying product instrument enabling people to invest in professionally managed portfolios. Do you want to kind of come online and ask the specific question, Justin?
Sure, Sajid. Essentially, I just gave an introduction to what small cases were. Like Sajid mentioned, it's a basket of stocks based on some idea, theme, or strategy that's professionally managed. Now, given the situation and given some of the insights that you mentioned, people are going to be, very conservative with money. They're going to be very concerned about, losing money, given that the stock markets are very volatile. And that's going to be the case for probably a year. So during that period of time, how can we not lose momentum and continue getting people to invest? How do we position our product in such a market, given that there are already investment options like mutual funds? So this is my question. Happy to add any more information.
Yeah, so I do know this far more detail than I would, but I would imagine that right now, the sort of relatively lay investor, I presume this product is obviously not for die-hard investors who know their mind and know what they want. This is akin to the mutual fund investor who wants to outsource or somewhere in between. He doesn't want to buy blind into something. He would like to apply his mind, but he'd like to be able to choose a sector or whatever, however you position each bundle. The idea, I think there is already come a time, but I'm sure progressively it will come, when the Sensex would have appeared to have bottomed out. And there will be, I suspect, people who would like to transfer from debt or whatever to invest at the time when they expect the Sensex to be at its lowest, which could be now, could be 2 months later, one doesn't know. And to that extent, I know that many of my friends and whatever are looking at that opportunity to come back into equity. And therefore, this idea would go with, I think Sajid alluded to, that you insightfully create this new age bundle that's going to actually benefit from the pandemic. And that's where I don't know how you can actually educate people and put together convincing case for how some of these, and elements of that is probably were there in my presentation, but you could go deeper into it to say why you expect this basket of companies and stocks to do really well, and to which are etc. So I think presenting because right now people are ravaged by the depreciation in asset prices and are desperately looking for advice. Insightful education on this subject would be, I think, of great value.
Thanks a lot.
Sort of adding a content layer or adding is I think a suggestion that you're giving. It looks.
Otherwise, if you want to actually come through, I'm sure you already do, but some sort of sort of almost getting a series of saying battling the COVID financially, almost putting your heads together and saying what industries are going to get the most screwed, but don't assume that everything will get screwed. This is also a silver lining and opportunity for many industries.
Yeah.
Explain some of those ideas.
Got it.
And create your portfolio out of those.
Yeah. So there's a question from Ranjana. Ranjana runs a baby breathing monitor startup. So Ranjana, I think some of it has been answered by Rahul. Does this mean that pre-COVID and post-COVID will remain the same? I didn't get that. Travel, luxury, e-commerce, health focus. And then she asks, is there any sector that would completely disappear or something that would be introduced post-COVID? So I think you alluded to some of this in your presentation.
Yeah, I think some already, sort of brick and mortar industries that were already, wobbly, like say newspapers.
Yeah.
I want to see a, dramatic, hit on the head.
Yeah.
Whether they survive this at all would be worth questioning.
Some of the numbers coming out of Times of India, some of the colleagues I'm sure you've spoken to are like astounding, to say the least. Yeah. So Ranjana, want to come in and just ask any questions, any follow up to that? Feel free. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was just listening to the presentation, I thought that post-COVID, you mentioned certain sections like revenge consumption for like luxury, travel, all that will increase. Even a focus on health.
In the long run. Rahul's view is that in the short run, even after 2-3 months, maybe 3-4 months after lockdown, things will be a lot more slower. I think it'll pick up after that. I think that Rahul is.
I would say the point I think in terms of the way to look at the time periods of this whole thing, lockdown is clearly one exceptional thing that we're going through. But I think that the period till we've so-called come on top of the disease, that's the period for which we'll remain in a funk, I do believe. And it's once you believe that you've come past that even then some conservatism may persist, but for some people, maybe depending on the demography and income levels, so for example, let's say well-off people in their 60s may suddenly want to splurge in things that they could not do because they suddenly become much more aware of their own mortality. And that was the broad thing. Sorry, Justin, please.
Yeah, I think so. The next question is an interesting one. So from Chirantan of SnapBiz. So SnapBiz is a retail POS company, point of sale. This thing. Will the choice of channels and so big box versus online versus Kirana change substantially, or such behavior change is temporary? So he's got skin in the game in the sense that SnapBiz is bought by premium Kirana stores. So so I think what he's asking is, are we looking at clearly a move away from Kirana into e-commerce decisively? How do you see that mix changing? Chirantan, feel free to add as Rahul replies.
Yeah, fair enough, Sajid. A quick add to that is obviously there's a called out euphoria around Kirana stores right now, and rightly so, because they are the ones who are fighting it out along with people in general, and the other neighborhood stores are supporting the essentials. But we're currently seeing a lot of move towards kiranas, and to put it in the words that we just heard around getting back to the roots. And it is, I believe, some people's preference to get to the roots is go to kirana and shop versus going to online. But will that choice remain kind of temporary during this period in the next 3-4 months, or do you think people will substantially think about this channel more and continue to shop here, even if they were shopping online before?
Yeah.
Again, I can offer a personal view, which is that I think kirana stores are a very hardy sector. I don't expect that they will wither up and die in a hurry. They are also modernizing. They're increasing their, improving the interface with customers. You know, I think what is clearly withering in the middle is these big format hypermarkets and so on. I know that, the sort of the big bazaar model of, I mean, people going all the way to a distant place in a mall to do their shopping, their kirana type shopping, their essentials and FMCG shopping is, it's caught between the convenience of a big basket, which of course still small, etc. I think grocery buying online is still yet to develop kind of a segment. It's developed nowhere as much as the other aspects of e-commerce has. But it will grow. I think the kirana store, actually none of the ORG data or whatever suggests that it's had a slowdown. Not just in the COVID period. I mean, I'm talking about for years. It is not, in fact, if anything, modern trade as a whole has in the last 4 years grown at a lower pace, I think, than the general trade. And of course, e-commerce has grown. So I think the kirana store is very much here to stay. There's trust in the kirana store to go back and return something if you find it wasn't fresh enough, and so on and so forth. And I said that somewhere this idea of community, of roots, if you will help the kirana store rather than hurt it.
Interesting, Rahul, you mentioned that. Even though DMart is only, they say the only billionaire who's come out of it even richer, but that's also because he runs the entire chain like a kirana store. Like, so, yeah, DMart.
So, yeah, single-mindedly offers such great value.
Yeah.
Also try to do so many things simultaneously. Yeah. You know, like Big Bazaar also has a Big Bazaar Gen Next. It's also wanting to become a food hall in the making. It's also wanting to do something else. Also wanting to become a fashion store. Yeah. DMart is unambiguous. Half their stores are not air conditioned. Yeah. They are in the, so, you know, and looking, I mean, whatever, there's a whole, it's like Southwest Airlines. It's like the whole business model anchored around the idea of cost effectiveness. It's a brilliant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's, last 5 minutes, but there's a question from Kiran Kumar. So Kiran runs a kind of an Audible plus Kindle for Telugu. It starts with Telugu and probably expanded to others as well.
I missed you. What for Telugu?
So Audible, audiobooks. Which is Audible. That's I think the brand. So he's asking, what is your outlook for the audiobooks industry?
I don't know enough about it. Yeah. I do feel that overall it is a huge opportunity. As somebody who actually likes to read my Economist subscription, I often find myself reading the podcast rather than
hearing the podcast.
And I think that it just hasn't been tried enough. But I'm no expert, so I can only say what I personally like, and I feel that in general, India is an oral tradition. The whole idea, I think in general, whether it's the pravachans and the satsangs, whether it is the idea of grandmother's tales, I think it's still very much a part of our culture. There's a segment of nuclear families that have moved on beyond it. But in general, I think India has always had a strong oral learning tradition, right? And so therefore, I think the idea of learning or even being able to focus on audio stimulus is higher with us. I think. I personally feel audiobooks have a huge future, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. So I think we're almost nearing the end. So now I have one question, and here I'm going to kind of lean on Rahul. So Rahul, a lot of CMOs, marketing leads, marketing heads, kind of head brand here. In terms of just trying to kind of think, and if you kind of put yourself in the shoes of a slightly online digital marketing, not necessarily digital marketing, but online marketing brand is one. And like, I know you advise Ustra as well. Are there any big picture inputs, thoughts that you would have, like to kind of wind this off? Like, is there a way in which you would just share? It may be something that they know already, but we'd love to hear it from you.
I can't say it's so. See, whatever is a function of how much money you got. For most people, they need to conserve cash. It depends on what business you're in. Are you in an investment mode? Are you clearly going to be so benefited by all these changes that we talked about? That is this your moment to really, in that sense, not to use a exploitative term like cash in, but this is your moment to really grow your business. In which case, obviously, you will do all that is required, both in terms of brand building, education, as well as performance marketing and all the rest of it. But on the other hand, if you're in a place where you just want to keep the cash registers ticking, as say, for example, let's say Ustra, for argument's sake, let's say we were on the threshold of a fairly big one, you just got some whatever, funding, etc. So on the threshold of something of a big splurge in the media. IPL even. But it just doesn't make any sense now. The idea now is to conserve cash. Just do the minimum amount of performance-oriented marketing online that will get the boxes moving, etc., etc. Conversely, let's say for something like, let's say, online coaching. A time when physical online centers are thing, a new batch of students is passed out. You also need to look at the IITs and blah, blah, blah. You may do aggressive marketing. So I don't think there's a single answer. It's a function of, and what marketing you do is a function of what game you're playing at a point in time.
Got it. It's context. Context matters.
Basic maintenance game. You're playing a basic maintenance game, you'll spend your money cautiously, just somehow to get the sales coming in. If you're playing a penetration game and a big whatever game, you play it very differently.
Got it. No, this is great. So I have one last question before we sign off. So Anurag from I think is Rootmat. Anurag, are you with Rootmatic? Yeah. So he's asking, do you think COVID users will stay away from public transport? Yes, of course. That's obvious. So if yes, will companies be forced to provide transport to employees? B, can we expect demand for more parking space in tech parks? The last one's a tricky one. So, but the second one, do you feel like companies will be forced to provide basics? Sort of even with food, cafeteria, for example, are companies going to say when it's work from office, is anything going to go up?
I can't say.
It's a tough one.
It all depends on how critical it is to have people working out of your office.
Yeah.
If it's critical enough for you to this thing, then you might even consider providing them transport.
Yeah.
But the first instinct would be to say that if it's a function that can, like marketing, which can operate,
then
do that. Because providing transport is high expense.
Yeah.
So it'll have to be traded off against the idea of saying, okay, if somebody, so I think it's again very industry specific.
I know we just run. Do you feel like this is very interesting? Do you feel like theoretically we may not go back to full work from office in the next 1-2 years? Or you think it could be that a certain percentage always works from home?
I think you'll begin to see some such thing. I think you'll see 2-3 things. One is that let's go back to an industry I really know. Let's say newspapers. Were it to still be in a mode of wanting to struggle and continue, there's no reason on earth for every reporter to have a permanent seat in office, right? As it is, half of them operate off the phone, from home, from various places. You could move to just a certain fixed number of flexible workstations with the option of people checking in when they want and become much more focused. It's possible to monitor people's productivity in terms of what work they're finally producing, what mails they're writing, what presentations they're making, and so on.
Got it. So sort of hybrid model may emerge.
I believe so. I believe that the idea of commuting to work just to clock
Got it.
out is a dated idea. If you're required there because a certain number, because certain kinds of let's say, workstations are available only at office. Or you need a certain LAN network which can't be given to you at home. Or there is a necessary amount of collaboration required. It's a different matter.
Got it.
I think can be. I think flexibility will come in for sure.
Yeah. No, this is great. So Rahul, of course, I mean, at some point we have to kind of draw this to a close, and that's now. So I think I've really enjoyed this, and I think from the comments and from some of the reactions I've got privately, I think folks have really enjoyed this. There's a lot of clamor for this deck, which I'll of course write to you separately, and also share your email ID with the wider team should they want to reach out to you. Rahul's based in Gurgaon, but otherwise we, like all of us, live in Zoom land now. Which is so sort of, yeah. So that's the virtual universe all of us live in now. And so Rahul's, of course, available for chatting. Is a generally friendly, great mind, and encourage you to kind of reach out in your own way, etc. Whenever you wish to. So Rahul, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this. It's
a good opportunity for me to also try and collect my thoughts. I think it was
yeah. I know you not necessarily get to interact one-on-one with a lot of people, but I'm sure we can figure that one out. And I'd be happy to kind of do some of these one-to-one introductions as well. So Sarita and I, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahul.
Yeah.
In fact, the whole going back to the roots and strengthening of roots, that was amazing. I think marketing by itself is very refreshing, right? We've done some B2B SaaS sessions, a lot of deep tech stuff. So this, I think people were all listening. It's Friday evening. It's kind of refreshing to hear what Indian consumers are thinking. So thank you so much.
Friday evening, but no bars to go. Yeah. And we're all running out of liquor. And we're all running out of liquor. Anyway, on that note, bye. Bye everyone. Bye, Rahul. You can sign off.